something bad happened here for Hockey Canada to jump in and settle this matter.
Hello and welcome to the next episode of Beneath the Law. My name is Gavin. I'm here with my regular co-host, and I would say sidekick actually, but I think I'm his sidekick, Stephen Teal.
No, I think you got it right the first time there, Gavin.
Well, oh no, I think I you're my sidekick, but you kick my side. How's that? So, and today we have a very, very special guest. Our partner and good friend Lad Kucis is here, and Lad is a specialist in health law, certified by the Law Society of Ontario in that very important sector of the law. And probably more important for today's episode, Lad, I think you're a hockey dad, if I'm not mistaken.
I am. Hockey dad of two.
Yep. Yeah, so today we're going to have a chat about what I'll call the dark side of the great Canadian game, which has really come to light in the past few years. And really, quite frankly, cast a pall, if you will, over the great game of hockey, in particular, and probably all, I wouldn't say amateur sport, but sport generally, and really revealed some of the issues that have come forward. And what we're talking about today, and I'm going to let Stephen sort of carry away with the particulars of this. But many of you will have heard this story. Of course, it was quite heavily played out in the media, where 5 former members of the Canadian World Junior Championship team, and just let me say that for those beyond the Canadian borders, the World Junior Hockey Championship is the holy grail of Canadian hockey for young players, really something that Canada takes incredible pride in terms of having the best in the world at junior level, who all became, as they're wont to do, became pros. And 5 years ago, there was an incident in London, Ontario, where they were celebrating their gold medal victory, which appears to have turned into a little bit of an ugly episode, which has echoed with repercussions now 6 years later, where they have been criminally charged with sexual assault, these 5 individual players. So, Stephen, maybe you can give our listeners who don't know the story a bit of a background.
Sure. So, as you mentioned, Gavin, in 2018, Canada won the gold medal at the World Junior Hockey Championship. Great event, obviously, for Canadians and Canadian pride in hockey. And so there was a gala event held in the summer to celebrate that championship victory. I think it was at a golf course in the London area. Everybody was in a very happy mood and celebrating that victory. And one of the players, ended up with a young woman, took her to a hotel, and then afterward, they were in a consensual kind of relationship there. But afterward, 5 or so other hockey players appeared or have been alleged to have joined them in the room where this young woman has alleged that she was sexually assaulted. What I find fascinating about this case, and I think this is Lad can provide a lot of input here, because not only does he do health law, but he does do some work with sports organizations and associations in terms of individuals who have been accused of certain wrongful conduct and stick handling, so to speak. The myriad of bylaws and rules that apply in those situations, because similarly here, Hockey Canada got involved in an investigation after a lawsuit. That lawsuit was settled out of court, created a media controversy on its own, and we can talk about that. But now London police, after initially not laying charges and closing an investigation, have laid charges against 5 professional athletes, 4 of whom have contracts with National Hockey League teams, and one who played in Europe. So that in a nutshell is the background to this, and I'm not sure, Gavin, where we want to quite go, if we want to talk about the Hockey Canada issues first and just regulation in general. And I think Lad's input there would be very helpful to dig into this area of law.
Yeah, Lad, why don't you give our listeners a bit of a background on that?
I mean, in terms of looking at the Hockey Canada perspective, in terms of the regulatory piece, I mean, this is obviously a case where, the Hockey Canada, the NHL, they don't really want to touch this matter with a 10-foot pole at this point. In my experience, generally speaking, when you've got regulatory bodies like Hockey Canada and you're dealing with criminal matters, they almost invariably want to let the criminal matter unfold before they take any steps, right? There's a lot of reasons for that. One is just, regulators like to let the criminal, the criminal process unfold, let the police and the Crown do their work and see where things go. Because sometimes if you have a criminal finding, that'll dictate the necessity to take a finding on the regulatory level. So I'm looking at this right now thinking, I think Hockey Canada and the NHL, they both want to let the criminal process unfold before they take any active steps on their own.
But help me with that, because in this case, my recollection may be wrong, but my understanding was, while there might have been a criminal complaint, I'm not actually sure if there was initially a criminal complaint. There was certainly a civil complaint, and Hockey Canada was very involved in resolving the civil complaint, in the sense that, from what I understand, cobbled together from what they've referred to as a slush fund, which has really become a political I was going to say hot potato, but it's a exploding hot potato, in the sense that they had a slush fund in place to deal with just this kind of thing, which people might call it a hush fund more than a slush fund. So to pay off, if you will, victims. And my understanding here was that this was not chump change in terms of the settlement that was paid here. There was a civil action. There was $3.5 million that changed hands. Presumably, listen, I do civil litigation for a living. Nobody's paying over that kind of money without getting a full and final release. Probably, and not uncommon, to get a confidentiality agreement, because what you're paying for is you're buying peace, you're buying finality, and so that's settled. And then, only then, I think that a year later, does the London police force, have a Paul on the road to Damascus moment and decides to, hey, wait a minute, we charged these guys 5 years ago, but we're going to charge them now after the money's already changed hands and the civil action is settled. So help me with that, because we've already been down the civil road here, and now we're going down the criminal road. And on that note, picking up what you said before, does the fact that there was a civil settlement hurt these accused? Because now is the fact that there was some tacit admission of liability that led to, multiple seven-figure number being exchanged, is that not an admission that they did it? Is that not an admission that they were liable, that they knew that they were exposed to damages? Can that be used against them in the criminal trial? And sort of, not to jump in, throw too many issues into the hopper on the first go, but if that's the case, why on earth would anybody that potentially faces criminal liability ever settle a civil action?
So before
crazy.
Lad, before you jump in on that, just to that we're not giving misinformation, we don't know what the value of the settlement was. The claim was for $3.5 million, but the actual figure in terms of what was settled is unknown.
Well, it's currently unknown, but look, the fact of the matter is, we know that there was a claim. We know that there was a settlement. certainly, I guess the issue is that admissible in the criminal proceeding?
So I don't know. Well, Lad, do you want to jump in? Gavin's giving you a number of issues there.
I mean, things we do know. There was a settlement. I think we agree that it was likely big, and almost immediately after the settlement, London police reinitiate their investigation. Right? I mean, it happens almost immediately afterwards, and that happens in July of 22. Another question is, it's a long time away from July 22. Like, even this took a long time, right? So going back to what Gavin said, I mean, I think it does work against these guys for the fact that you had the civil lawsuit. I mean, if you're a member of the jury or a judge looking at that, and that comes up and you're aware of that, I mean, you've got to look at that. And I mean, even if you're not outwardly stating it, there's got, as Gavin indicated, there's a tacit acknowledgement that something bad happened here for Hockey Canada to jump in and settle this matter. Because if there wasn't something culpable, why would Hockey Canada do that? So,
well, hang on a minute. People settle cases all the time with when they're not responsible, and there's all sorts of reasons why one could settle a case. I mean, this type of an allegation, this isn't a car accident case. This is toxic in the sense that, and let me play play devil. Let me play player's advocate for 1 second. The odds of a young man making the World Junior team and going on to a professional career are infinitesimally small. These guys are literally hockey lottery winners. Well, out of the thousands and thousands of young boys and men who play hockey, there's very, very, very small percentage to make a living at it. And as I said, these are the lottery winners. And that lottery win is a very, very brief moment in time. I mean, what's the average length of a professional hockey career? I mean, I think, is it 5, maybe 5 years? If you're lucky, if you play 5 years in the NHL, well, I mean, that's pretty, I don't know what the statistics are, but I would suspect that, if you played 5 games in the NHL, it'd be pretty spectacular, let alone 5 years. So this is really a career ender. These guys had winning lottery tickets, which have now been completely vitiated. I mean, I think their careers, short-lived as they may be, I don't know how do they go back? I mean, if they're gonna lose 2 out of 5 years or 3 out of 5 years, even if they're acquitted, at the end of the day, isn't it over for them? I mean, this is a career-ending case, win, lose, or draw, isn't it? So, I mean, to me, this is really quite troublesome in the sense that there was, I mean, that might have been the reason why. That would be a good reason to settle, wouldn't it? I don't want to face this specious allegation because just the whiff of it is enough to end my career. And you know what? It's worth it for me to just get out, get rid of it, and move on and sail on and do something else. So, I mean, I'm with you that it's hugely prejudicial to the criminal defense if this comes out. I don't know how probative it is, though. I mean, I don't know the fact that somebody settles an action is it an admission? I every release I've ever read says, by making this payment, I don't admit anything. Does that mean anything?
I think for the layperson, it means something. Like I think someone hearing
that's
like,
who sits on juries,
right?
Lay people.
There you go, right?
And so I think that I mean, from my perspective, I mean, don't you think that? Let me ask you this question: Is it appropriate to proceed with criminal charges after a civil action has been settled and a release has been signed?
That's a good question. I mean, you look at that and you think, I mean, at that point, these guys are all, you think back to this, at that point, these guys were thinking the criminal matter's done, right? I mean, they signed that civil agreement's entered. You've got the civil case, over and done with. The criminal matter, there was no investigation. They're looking at it as being completely over. I mean, if the timing was a little different and there was a pending criminal investigation, they may not have agreed. That civil settlement may not have happened, right?
Well, certainly if in the context of our conversation today, no lawyer worth their salt would ever tell you to pay a penny when there's even the slightest possibility that the payment of money could be considered to be an admission of guilt. If you, no one would ever settle. You'd never settle this. So putting that in a different context, and like, I mean, this is in the context where we're going to get some people that are going, oh, victims' rights matters. These are very serious issues. There's been a huge power imbalance over the years, and all of that is true. But is it self-defeating in the sense that if there is a permanent threat of criminal sanction, why would anybody ever settle the corresponding civil case? And why would you ever agree to compensate the victim?
I think that's a really important point, Gavin, in terms of, both you and I and Lad as well would be familiar with an administrative tribunal investigating somebody and criminal charges pending at the same time, and that an administrative tribunal is not obligated to stay there proceeding while the criminal investigation is still going on. So technically, they could make a finding of professional liability prior to the criminal case going before the jury or before the judge. And so what we have here is Hockey Canada settled a lawsuit that was brought against it. I don't think the players were actually named in that lawsuit. And who knows if they paid anything. We're assuming that they did. They probably did. Hockey players have celebrity status in Canada. And so they become targets just like a Hollywood actor or a celebrity in the U.S. becomes a target. And then settlements are made quite often just to keep somebody quiet. So, it's interesting. I'm not sure what the impact of that would be, but certainly my understanding is a professional liability finding may indeed have some evidentiary value in a criminal proceeding.
Well, I mean, let me just step back from that for 1 second. One of the things that I think is quite important, and our American listeners will be shocked when I say this. I mean, one of the things we hear about in the U.S. all the time from watching, well, as Canadians, we grew up on American television, but the right to remain silent. Guess what? You don't have one in Canada. You are required on a civil action you are compelled to answer questions which could incriminate you criminally. Now, you can claim protection of the Evidence Act in the sense that you can say that these particular answers aren't admissible in a criminal prosecution. But really, I mean, if you're giving up information, if you're making admissions, you are, and that there's a record of it. I mean, you do not have a right to remain silent. You have to answer questions, for example, on a civil examination for discovery that you would not have to answer in a similar situation in a civil American proceeding. So is that, and those answers are there, admissible or otherwise, and they can lead people like, the police down certain lines of inquiry that they may not have gone to had you not been required to answer the question. So there's all sorts of prejudice to an accused person in the context of parallel civil and or administrative proceedings going at the same time, or even worse, before criminal prosecution. And isn't that where these guys find themselves?
Do you think there's a chance, Gavin, that something popped up during that civil matter that made its way back to the London police, and that may have prompted the investigation being reinitiated? I mean, something changed.
Well, it's something. There's a number of possibilities, I suppose, and one of them is, as you mentioned, that in the course of the civil proceeding, that either there was an admission or something of that nature. That, the payment, we don't know what it is, but the payment of $1 would have been arguably an admission of something, or potentially the climate change, in the sense that. I think that there was a new chief installed of the London police force. I think the rank and file police do a great job and work very hard, but, chiefs of police have become increasingly political in the Canadian system, and it may have been seen as politically more popular to pursue proceed with these charges, given the huge public uproar over the slush fund issue. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I think, Gavin, just to interject here quickly, it's unclear at what stage the civil proceedings were at before Hockey Canada reached a settlement. But what we do know is that there was a public inquiry into Hockey Canada's use of money by the federal government, and people were required to show up at hearings over this issue and the use of the slush fund. Now, personally, Gavin, I don't see any problem with an organization having a bundle of money set aside to deal with uninsured kinds of claims. Now, with respect to Hockey Canada, those funds came from other players and parents paying fees into that organization. But, businesses settle cases all the time and have contingency funds in place to deal with that kind of issue. So, I'm not overly concerned that there was a slush fund. My concern is for the victim.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
Well, we might disagree.
No. I mean, I think I don't know that we do, because I think that I agree with. Look, there's brand protection. All of those things, they matter. I mean, companies, for example, invest enormous amounts of money in branding, in market, in their place in the marketplace, and they want to protect it. That's fair. That's a legitimate business interest. I think where you get over the line, to my mind, is if you've got victims of crime, the victim of a crime, and you say, and I that's why I've used the term the hush fund or the slush fund. If I'm paying people to shut up and don't go to the police, here's like, I don't know, $100,000. Don't go to the police. Don't tell them about this crime. Isn't that obstruction of justice? Isn't that a crime?
Well, look. First of all, with respect to the players, they're innocent until proven guilty. So, none of the players have been actually found guilty. So, their innocence is still protected. And we're speculating in terms of what the allegation, whether it's true or not true. At this stage, it's an allegation until it goes through its court proceeding. Now, I guess my concern is there have been a number of investigations. We know Hockey Canada did an investigation and reached a settlement. We know that the NHL has also done an investigation, but they've refused to release their investigation. Now, what I thought was interesting in that is that the alleged victim of this alleged criminal activity did not participate in any interviews in the NHL investigation. So, I'm not sure what the weight of that investigation necessarily has, but the NHL hasn't released any of its investigation. And so we've got the Hockey Canada investigation. And now we're going to have criminal proceedings. And look, I mean, let's face it, in Canada here, the way that our justice system is going, this actually may never see a courtroom and may get dismissed for not being heard in time, for all we know.
I don't think. I think that this is. I mean, Lad, what do you think? I mean,
I would be shocked.
This is no parking ticket. This is going to trial. Or something is happening.
I mean, the more we talk about this and kind of thinking it through, I mean, this case has definitely gotten bigger as time has gone on, right? I mean, if you saw that press conference with the police there, that was a big scene, right? I mean, every sports reporter you can imagine was there. I look at this and think of the political climate in view of the fact that the Hockey Canada settlement occurred. I am speculating here that there would not have had to have been all that much new information for the London police to reopen that investigation. That's just my take on it. Well, I don't know if there was a smoking gun out there. If I had to bet on it, I'd bet there wasn't all that much more. But they look at this and feel compelled to do it.
Well, hang on a second. Let's go back to that press conference, because I got to say the civil liberty side of me really it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up when I saw the police basically up there convicting these young men. If I refer to, we've been careful to use the word alleged. Alleged, I mean, people who might get offended at that, who are on the other side of this, but allegations are just that. That's why we have courts. Courts make findings of fact. They make findings. There's a big difference between an allegation and a finding. If you jump immediately over the allegations are true, you've just made courts irrelevant. And I think that's disrespectful and abusive of the court process and abusive of what we hold kind of dear in a free and democratic society. I think it's important to call it alleged, no matter what the crime is, until a court has an opportunity to weigh that. But you have the chief of police standing up there saying that this person was a victim, as much as saying water is wet. This is a fact. They are a victim. If they're a victim, then the accused are perpetrators. If you're a perpetrator, you're convicted. That's a finding. I found that whole press conference, quite frankly, I mean, if I'm on the defense side, I would have said it was hugely prejudicial to the accused's ability to get a fair trial.
In my regulatory world, they don't use the term victim. It's a complainant, right? And I mean, you refer to
that's not what the police chief said.
Not at all.
It was a fact. This woman was a victim, and it was a proven fact. There was a fine, as far as that police chief was concerned. So, it raises the political side of it as well. I appreciate that there is a great movement afoot with respect to granting sort of a presumption of credibility on these types of allegations. And I understand that. But I mean, I think it's dangerous. It's dangerous from a number of perspectives because it's a presumption of guilt as opposed to what our whole entire criminal justice system is founded on, which is a presumption of innocence. And these are allegations until a judge says otherwise or a jury says otherwise. And, I think a police chief standing up there and telling the public in a news conference that every potential juror in the world is going to hear that these guys are guilty, as they're guilty. This woman is a victim and they are perpetrators. They're guilty. I think that's prejudicial to a fair trial. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, not only that, they apologized to her for not initially charging these players criminally. Now, you talk about the prejudice, and I'm sure the criminal lawyers will raise that argument. I'm kind of looking down the road here. If London police, if the Crown, and there's a distinction, the police are not prosecuting the case. The Attorney General's office prosecutes the case. But if these players are found not guilty at the end of the day, presuming it goes to trial, they've got a significant malicious prosecution case against the London Police Department.
Really? Right. It particularly if it's just demonstrated that no new real facts arose, but all that changed was that the political calculus that it was in the interests of certain officials to proceed with a prosecution that they thought was politically expedient for them. I mean, that would be a outrageously significant malicious prosecution case. I don't know. I'm not suggesting those are the facts. Well, they might be the facts. I don't know. I just don't know the answer. But if they were, the amounts of money that the taxpayers would be on the hook for would be exorbitant.
Well, take a look at it. Carter Hart, I think, has a contract of $11.5 million playing for the Philadelphia Flyers. And, we talked about it. The careers of these hockey players is basically over. They're on paid leave of absences now. All of their contracts just happen to expire at the end of this hockey season. There's not any hockey team that is going to touch any of these players, certainly not within North America. I'm not sure if they can find anywhere in Europe to play, but let's assume that their careers are now on hold for 4 to 5 years at least, pending the trial. And if they're found not guilty, these guys are 30. Good luck restarting your career at the age of 30 in hockey. But these people are earning significant amount of money, and a malicious prosecution action is going to cost the province of Ontario and the London Police Service hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, I mean, look, just on that point, They're all on bail, aren't they? At this point, they're accused. So they're on bail, and I'm assuming that one of the bail conditions is you can't travel, and you're certainly not going off to live and play in the Russian league, because that would probably violate.
It might be the only league that would take them, right? But no, but I agree. I mean, I can't imagine these guys resurrecting their careers. I mean, irrespective of the outcome of the case, right? I mean, at the end of the day, even if they're found not guilty, they will not have played in a competitive environment for such a long period of time. They have to question how that's impacted their skill set. And even if they're found not guilty, you never know how teams will look at that in terms of, do they even, like with the political climate as it is, would they even want to go there if they felt there was something in that case that resulted in that not guilty finding, right? Who knows, right?
Right. I mean, I think that there's much yet to unfold. There's much yet to be revealed in terms of all of not only what happened in London in 2018, but also what has happened institutionally at the London Police Department that made them have a change of heart with respect to these criminal charges, all of which I'm sure will be unveiled in the years to come. I think we all agree that the stakes here are incredibly high on all sides. I think the point that I would like people to think about is sometimes to every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, and things like criminal charges following civil settlements inherently discourage civil settlements, and civil settlements are good for plaintiffs. They're good for victims in the sense that they compensate as best you can. I may appreciate that money will never compensate you for some things, but at least it's something. And if you draw the line that you can always be charged afterwards, no one's going to settle. I think that's a problem. And I also raise the point that it really is a quandary, I think, in Canadian justice, that you can have parallel proceedings with the threat of criminal sanction ahead of you, and you don't have the right against self-incrimination here. You have the right to try to keep it excluded from the record. I think that's a rather artificial one, but those are real issues. And I think that the Canadian system really needs to grapple with those in terms of an individual rights case, and probably not in the case where somebody is guilty, probably not in a bona fide prosecution, but in I would say the rarer case where it's not someone is not guilty, where someone's life is ruined over an allegation like this. So, I mean, those are issues I think everybody needs to ponder. I think they should ponder.
The one thing, Gavin, here that I think is valuable for anybody, and young men in particular, certainly in a hockey environment. I mean, we know what goes on in terms of celebrity status of hockey players in Canada, and people get attracted to celebrities, and they like following them. And you go to a Blue Jays game, and there are people holding up signs, please marry me, Vladdy Guerrero, and all those kinds of things. So there are lessons here in terms of the way that people need to handle themselves, and they need to be careful in terms of the situations that they get themselves into. I hope that nothing wrongful happened for the sake of the players. If it did, that's on them, and they deserve to be punished. But I think for others, looking in the future, that people need to be very careful in terms of how they take on their celebrity status, and that accusations can be made against anybody at any time, whether they're true or not.
That's right. And in the world of the lottery winning professional athlete, it is a very fragile ticket that can be ruined very, very easily, and they need to be incredibly in the world we live in today. You need to guard that ticket with great judiciousness and care, because it can be lost, frankly, in an instant.
And be careful of the situations you put yourself in, right? I mean,
100%.
Not speaking to guilt or, at all in this case, who knows, right? But I mean, at minimum, these guys definitely put themselves in a situation where,
bearing in mind, of course, bearing in mind that at the time they were 18 years old. I mean, we're sitting here putting, as my mother would say, an old head on young shoulders, and a difficult thing to do, but boy, what a tragedy! What a tragedy all around. Ruinous for their lives, ruinous for this young woman's life, ruinous to some extent to the game of hockey. Something that I think is so all around a tragedy, and we'll wait and see how the cards play out as this prosecution unfolds. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today on this very interesting and topical episode of Beneath the Law. We haven't really gotten beneath it yet, but we've staked out our ground for a future episode of Beneath the Law, that's for sure.
We've been skating on the surface on this one, Gavin.
Yeah, on thin ice as usual, Stephen. But Lad, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in and joining us again for this episode. Please leave us a rating. We're rookies at this, and we're certainly haven't on any World Junior teams, that's for sure. And we're learning, and as we go, we're trying to make this interesting and fun and thought-provoking. Any comments you have, we'd really love to get those and learn from those as well. Please, if you like us, pass us along to some friends so they can listen too, and hopefully inspire some difficult and interesting conversations around the dinner table and otherwise. And once again, thanks to our producer, Doug Downs, for a terrific job. And join us the next time. And always remember, if no one is above the law, then everyone is beneath it.